This is a story about a regular office worker. He was 30 years old, worked 11 hours a day, and had only a 4-digit balance in his bank account. Until he discovered the 8 p.m. rule in just 120 days, he completely broke free from the trap of a dead-end salary. What he did in those late-night hours will make you completely rethink your time after work. This young man was named Ajian. Ajian worked as a basic customer service representative at a small company. His daily job consisted of answering endless complaint calls and enduring all kinds of unreasonable abuse from customers. From 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., his energy and patience were completely drained by this daily friction. After deducting his mortgage, Social Security, and basic living expenses each month, there was barely anything left in his salary account. The time Ajian looked forward to most every day was heading home after work, when he dragged his exhausted body back to his tiny rented single room. He felt like he was finally alive. He would order a cheap takeout meal, lie on his bed, and numbly open his phone to start scrolling through short videos, one funny sketch after another. Beautiful girls dancing and gaming live streams gave his brain a fleeting sense of pleasure through brief stimulation. Often when he finally looked up, it was already 1 o'clock in the morning. He would feel a sharp wave of emptiness and guilt, but immediately afterward, he would be overwhelmed by a helpless exhaustion, roll over, fall into a deep sleep, and wait for the alarm to go off the next day. He felt like a wound-up machine walking in place on a conveyor belt with no future. It was not that he had never thought about changing. He had once bought several books on personal finance with burning enthusiasm, downloaded English learning apps, and even paid money to register for lectures by famous speakers. But every single time, the result was exactly the same. The daytime work was simply too exhausting. When he returned home at night and faced those dry vocabulary words and complex charts, his brain would rebel fiercely. A voice deep inside his heart would constantly tell him that he had already worked hard enough today, so why make things difficult for himself, and that he should just rest a bit and learn tomorrow instead. As a result, those books were only flipped to the first 3 pages. Those apps gathered dust on his phone, and his life remained completely unchanged. This day-to-day existence of just getting by was completely shattered during a sudden rainstorm. It was an ordinary Tuesday. Ajian had just been chewed out by his supervisor at his cubicle when his phone suddenly vibrated violently. The call was from the hospital. His mother had suddenly fainted while buying groceries and was rushed to the hospital. The doctor said it was a severe cardiovascular illness triggered by long-term fatigue, and an emergency surgery had to be performed immediately. And the advance payment for the surgery was 50,000 yuan. The moment he heard this number, Ajian felt as if a loud thunderclap had exploded next to his ear, and the blood across his entire body seemed to freeze instantly. With a trembling hand, he opened his mobile banking app. When he added up the balances of all his bank cards, there was only a pitiful 4,300 yuan. He sat on the curb downstairs from his office building, watching the people passing by and the flashing neon lights, as a massive sense of helplessness and shame washed over him like a tidal wave. He realized he was a complete and utter failure, when the mother who loved him most was lying on a hospital bed waiting for life. Saving money, he, as her only son, could not even afford to sign a standard surgery form. For the first time, he felt an extreme rage toward his current situation, a rage toward his own incompetence, his own laziness, and that completely worthless time after work. He had to lower himself and go through a whole round of borrowing from all his relatives and friends, and even used online loans, just to barely scrape together the surgery fee. When he watched his mother come out of the operating room with bloodshot eyes and then returned to that cold rented room, he sat in the dark, staring blankly at his phone screen. The screen reflected his face, which was swollen and numb from staying up late and feeling anxious. He said to himself that he could not go on like this, absolutely could not go on like this. And if life was a slow suicide, he had to end it with his own hands today. To pay off the borrowed money and online loans, Ajian had no choice but to start looking for part-time work. Through a friend's introduction, he contacted the owner of a local studio that specialized in cross-border social media, a man named Boss Chen, planning to use his weekends to help them move materials or do odd jobs. Late on a Saturday night, most of the employees in the studio had already gone home. Only Boss Chen was still sitting in front of a huge monitor. reviewing the overseas data of the day with extreme focus. Ajian finished his work, walked over, and placed the organized documents on the desk. Boss Chen looked up at Ajian's face, which was full of exhaustion and anxiety, but carried a hint of ruthlessness in his eyes. He handed him a bottle of water, and asked him why he was pushing himself so hard. Ajian did not hide anything. He poured out his current situation of his mother being hospitalized, his mountain of debt, and his miserable daytime salary. Boss Chen listened, let out a sigh, then closed his laptop and looked into Ajian's eyes. Boss Chen said to Ajian, "Do you think you are exhausted like a dog every day after work because you are working too hard?" Boss Chen shook his head and said, "No, you are not working too hard. You are living too blindly. Every day you package your freshest, most golden energy and sell it to your boss at an extremely low price to help someone else achieve their dreams. Then, you keep your most garbage, most exhausted, most incompetent energy for yourself, using short videos and sleep to just get by in your own life. You are surviving during the day, but you are destroying yourself during your hours at night. The thing that draws the greatest gap between people is never the 8 hours during the day, because everyone is selling their labor during those 8 hours. What truly decides whether you will be a poor person or a rich person for the rest of your life is the 2 hours between 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. every single night." Boss Chen drew a long line on a piece of white paper and divided this line into many small squares. Boss Chen said to Ajian, "You think 2 hours is very short, don't you? Let us do a simple calculation. Every night from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. is a full 2 hours. If you can claw these 2 hours back from scrolling through your phone, watching shows, and meaningless socializing, that is 730 hours a year. If you convert this according to the standard 8-hour workday, this is equivalent to you having a full 91 days of working time more than anyone else every single year. These 91 days do not require you to report to anyone, nor do you need to listen to any boss's criticism. This is an absolute domain that belongs entirely to you, used to build your future. If you use all of these 91 days to dead, and study a hard skill that allows you to make money, how could you possibly fail to make money after a year?" Looking at that clear number of 91 days on the white paper, Ajian's heart began to beat violently. He had never imagined that the time he carelessly squandered every night would accumulate into such a terrifying amount of wealth. He looked at Boss Chen, his eyes filled with extreme hunger, and he asked Boss Chen, "Then what exactly should I do? I am already so tired during the day. How is it possible for me to concentrate at night to learn those complex things?" Boss Chen gave a cold laugh. Boss Chen said, "That is because you do not have a systematic dark night building system, and you always want to become fat with one bite starting tomorrow. I will give you a set of the 820 rule. You do not need to learn those high and mighty, massive theories. You only need to use these 2 hours to do 2 things. The first hour, which is from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m., is called skill pixelation. During this hour, you must completely disconnect from the world. You need to use all the free channels available on the internet to dead, and study a hard skill that can be directly monetized on the network within a short period of time. Do not learn about office politics for promotions and raises. Go learn tools that can directly help you secure overseas orders or part-time pocket money. For example, AI prompt engineering practice, copywriting for overseas e-commerce independent sites, or the most basic short video editing and packaging. On the current internet, all top-tier tutorials are free. There are countless high-definition practical videos on YouTube and Bilibili. Having no money is not an excuse, and having no background is not an excuse either. The internet is the most level, playing field university. Boss Chen paused, then wrote down the plan for the second hour on the paper. The second hour, which is from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m., is called output and real combat. Too many people fail because they feel they are not ready yet. They spend 100 days learning theory without ever moving their hand. My requirement is that whatever you learned in the first hour, you must use it immediately in the second hour. Go onto freelancing platforms, go into various order, taking groups, and take those lowest priced, lowest level garbage orders that pay only 5 or 10 yuan per order. Use the pickiness and time limits of real clients to force yourself to deliver what you learned in the previous hour. Making mistakes in real combat and evolving through those mistakes is the only shortcut. Ajian took notes rapidly. Boss Chen finally held up 3 fingers, his tone becoming extremely serious. Boss Chen said, "This system sounds very simple, but 99% of people will desert in the first week, because it violates the human instinct of pursuing comfort. Therefore, I am setting 3 iron rules for you, and you must follow them strictly. Iron rule number 1. After arriving home, immediately lock your phone inside the living room drawer. Roll into a small dark room yourself, shut the door, and absolutely do not take it out until 10 p.m. Iron rule number 2, do not look at your income. You might encounter countless difficulties and make absolutely zero money in the first 30 days. What you need to do is complete your delivery volume like a machine. Iron rule number 3. Reject all meaningless dinners, game invitations, and casual chats after work. Declare to everyone around you that 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. is your absolute domain, sacred and inviolable. Boss Chen handed the piece of white paper covered in numbers and rules to Ajian. Boss Chen said, "I am giving you 120 days of time. During these 120 days, every single night from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., dead-end study like a monk. If you do it after 120 days and you still have not made money, come find me, and I will arrange a core position in the studio for you. But if you give up halfway and go back to scrolling through your short videos, then it just proves that you deserve to live a bottom-tier life, where you cannot afford a surgery form in your bones, and do not complain about an unfair destiny to me ever again." Ajian took that burning piece of paper and nodded heavily. He said, "Boss Chen, if I cannot even conquer these 2 hours, I do not deserve to live in this world." At 7:30 p.m. the next evening, Ajian walked out of the company's main doors just like usual. His body was still very tired, and his supervisor's scolding from the day was still echoing in his mind, but his gaze had become completely different from the past. He did not wander around on the streets, nor did he buy high-calorie junk food. Instead, he rushed back to his rented room at the fastest possible speed. As soon as he entered the door, he glanced at his phone, and it was 7:55 p.m. Without any hesitation, he directly muted his phone, threw it into the deepest drawer, and locked it tightly. He walked to his worn-out desk, brought out a cup of strong tea, and opened his computer. At exactly 8 p.m., the challenge officially began. The hard skill Ajian chose was AI copywriting and automated layout for overseas e-commerce independent sites. Because he had heard Boss Chen say that many overseas small merchants desperately need this kind of low-cost digital content, and as long as one can use AI tools well, a single person can do the work of an entire team. However, life during the first week was a complete waking hell for Ajian. When he sat in front of the computer and looked at those completely unfamiliar prompt logics, complex automated workflows, and full English interfaces, his brain began to protest wildly. The daytime fatigue was magnified multiple times at this very moment. His temples throbbed wave after wave, and his eyes were so dry he could barely keep them open. The words on the computer screen seemed to shake, turning into symbols that mocked him. The lazy devil deep inside his heart jumped out once again, saying to him, "Ajian, are you crazy? You already earned that miserable little salary during the day, so why do you have to suffer this at night? You have already paid off a portion of the online loans. Isn't it fine to take it slow? Just rest once tonight. Just once, lie on the bed, and scroll through videos for 20 minutes, and you can get a good night's sleep." Ajian's hand began to stretch toward the direction of the drawer uncontrollably. Right at the moment his fingertips touched the drawer key, his mind suddenly flashed to his mother lying on the hospital bed, with that face that was pale from pain and covered in wrinkles. He remembered the cold voice of that doctor saying, "Please pay the fees as soon as possible." That sense of helplessness that almost tore him apart gripped his heart tightly once again. Ajian slapped himself hard across the face. The crisp sound of the slap was exceptionally loud in the quiet room. He gasped for air heavily, his gaze becoming ruthless once more. He roared to himself, saying that if you stop right now, you can only be a failure who cries on the curb for the rest of your life. He sat back down and forced his eyes to stare tightly at the tutorial. If he did not understand it, he paused the video and looked it up word by word on Baidu. If an operation failed, he cleared the code and restarted entering it from the very first line. When the first hour passed, His notebook was already filled with dense records of corrections. At 9 p.m., the alarm rang right on time, entering the second hour of output and real combat. Ajian opened several freelancer platforms that Boss Chen had recommended. He discovered that his half-baked skills had absolutely no competitiveness in the market, so he adopted the most primitive and also the most ruthless strategy, lowering his order, taking prices to the absolute lowest across the entire network. While others charged 50 yuan to write a product copywriting description, he only wanted 5 yuan. While others required 3 days for delivery, he promised to revise until satisfied within 3 hours. On the first night, he did not receive a single order. On the second day, still nothing. Not until 9:40 p.m. on the fourth night did a notification sound finally jump out from his computer back end. An overseas independent site seller who sold pet supplies gave him an opportunity for a trial draft, requiring a piece of English promotional copywriting for a cat litter box to be written before 11 p.m., 5 yuan. As if seeing a life-saving straw, Ajian's fingers began to tap frantically on the keyboard. He applied the AI prompt models he learned in the first hour to the ultimate limit, generated over a dozen different styles, and then used his pitiful foundation of English to polish, modify, and proofread sentence by sentence with the help of translation software. When he submitted the final draft over there, the time was 10:55 p.m., the other party replied. Very quickly, with 2 words, not bad. That night, holding that revenue, which had just arrived in his account and was only a bit over 4 yuan after deducting platform fees, Ajian lay on his bed and shed tears. This was not because he felt wronged by the small amount of money, but because he saw the light. He proved that Boss Chen's words were right, and the time from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. every night could truly turn into productivity. Entering the second month, things began to undergo subtle changes. Ajian's body and brain seemed to have formed a strange kind of biological clock. Every night at 7:30 p.m., the moment he walked into that rented room, his brain would automatically switch to an extremely excited, extremely focused combat state. He no longer felt that watching tutorials was a painful thing, and those complex logics and tools turned into wild beasts that could be tamed in his eyes. He could already skillfully set up an automated workflow for copywriting generation and image layout. He was no longer confined to those 5 yuan garbage orders. His unit price per order increased to 30 yuan and 50 yuan, and he accumulated several small overseas e-commerce brands for long-term cooperation. His daytime colleagues began to notice that Ajian had changed. He used to always be listless, his gaze scattered, following everyone all day to complain about the company, complain about society, and complain about destiny. But the current Ajian, although he still looked quite thin, had a beam of light in his eyes that made people not dare to look at him directly. His work efficiency became extremely high. He no longer participated in any office gossip or casual chats, and every time it was off work hours, he was always the first to punch out and leave. His colleagues laughed at him behind his back, saying that he must have found a girlfriend or was rushing back to play games. Hearing these words, Ajian just gave a faint smile. He understood clearly in his heart that they had absolutely no idea how. Inside that small dark room from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. every night, he was cutting himself off from his past self at such a terrifying speed. When the challenge entered its 90th day, Ajian faced a true test. An overseas independent site client, with whom he had a long-term cooperation, suddenly contacted him saying that their primary promotional product was going to participate in a large-scale online promotional event in 3 days, and they urgently needed to produce a full set of landing page copywriting and multi-language advertising materials. This was a core order with a massive workload, and the other party offered a high price of $800, which converted to over 5,000 yuan in renminbi. To Ajian at that time, this was a huge sum of money sufficient to pay off all his remaining online loans. But the other party put forward a nearly harsh requirement, which was that the first version must be delivered within 48 hours. This meant that it was absolutely impossible for Ajian to complete it relying solely on his 2 hours every night. Ajian stood at the crossroads of destiny. He looked at his daytime customer service job, and then looked at this order, which was enough to let him turn his life around. He grit his teeth and made an extremely bold decision. He took 3 days of sick leave without any pay. During these 3 days of leave, he directly expanded Boss Chen's dark night building system to the absolute limit. He was no longer just working from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., but rather used all his waking hours except for eating and sleeping to output frantically. On the first day, he wrote a full 10,000 words of prompts, and the computer crashed 3 times due to overload. His fingers became numb from typing on the keyboard, and his eyes were completely bloodshot. On the second day, he overturned all the designs he was unsatisfied with and readjusted the entire automated layout logic. At the 43rd hour, he packaged the entire set of materials, which were exquisitely beautiful and fully conformed to localized overseas expressions, and sent them to the client's email inbox. It was a Thursday afternoon, and Ajian lay on his straw mat as if completely drained of strength, quietly waiting for the judgment. 2 hours later, the other party sent a long voice message. In the voice message, that overseas client used an extremely shocked and appreciative tone to tell him that this was the most perfect delivery they had received this year. The design exceeded expectations, and the efficiency was simply unbelievable. The remaining balance of $800 hit Ajian's account in an instant. Not only that, the other party also officially extended a long-term contract invitation to him, hiring him to become the online content director for the brand in the Asia-Pacific region, with a fixed monthly base salary of $2,000 plus project commissions. $2,000. That was a full 3 times more than his daytime miserable salary. Ajian sat on the floor, looking at the arrival notification on his phone screen, and suddenly wept aloud. This time he cried wantonly, cried thoroughly and completely. He released all the grievances, all the cowardice, and all the helplessness he had suffered over the past 30 years along with his tears. He had finally used his own hands, inside that small dark room that no one could see, to smash the shackles that destiny had placed on him. On the 120th day, Ajian came to Boss Chen's studio once again. He did not bring any tools for doing odd jobs, but instead wore a clean and tidy shirt and respectfully presented an account statement and project delivery report from these 4 months before Boss Chen. On the statement, it was written clearly and precisely: total order volume 140, 2 orders, total revenue converted to 46,000 yuan in renminbi, online loans completely paid off, and a bank card balance of 21,000 yuan. Boss Chen looked at the report and did not speak for a long time. Finally, Boss Chen raised his head, revealing an incomparably gratified and proud smile. Boss Chen patted Ajian on the shoulder and said to him, "I have led many employees, and I have also explained this truth to many people. They are all burning with enthusiasm when they listen, but they often complain about being tired after 3 days, feel that there is no effect after 5 days, and go back to live those days of sinking while complaining. Ajian, you are the only one who truly turned the squares I drew into reality. You do not need to come to my studio to do odd jobs anymore. Your current skills and execution are already enough for you to become an independent partner." The current Ajian has already completely resigned from that customer service job that could be seen to its end at a single glance. He rented a spacious and bright apartment with a large balcony for his mother in a high-end residential area of the city, and hired a specialized nanny to take care of his mother's health. He himself also established a small digital marketing studio, and his daily income is dozens of times what it used to be. His life underwent earth-shattering changes, but there is one thing that he has never changed. At exactly 8 p.m. every night, no matter whether he is negotiating business with a major client or how busy he is, he will disconnect from the world right on time. He will decline all social invitations, turn off his phone, and lock himself inside his study room. Those 2 hours are still his absolute domain. The current him is using these 2 hours to learn more advanced business structures and capital operations. Many newly acquainted wealthy friends around him ask him, "Ajian, you are already so rich now and achieved financial freedom long ago. So why do you still make yourself so tense every night and still push yourself hard like a monk?" Ajian always gives a faint smile, and then says a sentence that makes everyone think deeply. Ajian says, "Success is never a once, and for all destination, but a kind of practice that needs to be repeated every day. Me daytime wealth is given to me by the era and luck, but the cognitive understanding I earn from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. at night is the true baseline strength that belongs to me and that no one can take away. My dignity, my freedom, and my ability to protect my family were all born inside that small dark room at 8 p.m. Me friend, after listening to Aegean's story, what do you feel right now? Are you thinking that this is just a myth that happens to someone else? Thinking that Aegean just had good luck and met Boss Chen? Or thinking that he just happened to catch a wave of dividends? If you are still thinking this way, it just shows that you are still using the weak mindset of a poor person to paralyze yourself. Aegean's story is not a myth at all. It is the coldest mathematical logic, and it is the most ruthless karmic retribution. The greatest power in this world is never some earth-shattering miracle, but compound interest day after day between you and those people you envy, who stand high above. The gap has never been IQ, has never been luck, and has not even been family background. The most fundamental difference lies in how you treat your garbage time after 8 p.m. every single night. Think carefully about your life after work every day. When you return home at 7:30 p.m., feel tired, feel worn out, and take it for granted to lie on the sofa and open those short video apps. You think you are relaxing, and you think you are enjoying life. But in reality, those entertainment apps that are meticulously designed with algorithms are like leeches, sucking away your remaining willpower bite by bite, and paralyzing your vigilance against poverty with cheap pleasure. In those meaningless swipes, you murder that self with your own hands who could have become stronger, while you forward pessimistic remarks about class solidification and working people having no way out on social media platforms. You offer up the only time that can be used to break class solidification with both hands to the industrial assembly line of entertaining yourself to death. Isn't this the greatest irony? Stop making excuses to yourself about being too tired during the day or having no time. If a person cannot even control the 2 hours that belong to himself every day, and if a person does not even have the ruthlessness to turn off his phone and throw it into a drawer, then on what grounds does he deserve to live the life he wants? Life is exceptionally fair and cruel. You chose comfort at 8 p.m. and life will slap you hard across the face at some unknown moment with a surgery form you cannot afford, with a sudden change against which you are helpless, or with a midlife unemployment crisis. This is cause and effect. Therefore, I am right here, issuing the most severe Dark Knight building challenge to all friends who are listening to this broadcast and who still have a trace of unwillingness left in their hearts. This challenge does not require you to resign immediately like Aegean, nor does it require you to invest a single penny of capital. It only requires you to bring out the 2 hours that you deserve, and that originally belonged to you anyway. The first step tonight, when you hear up to this point, go buy the cheapest physical lock, or prepare a box for which you usually cannot find the key at all. At 7:55 p.m., turn off your phone, your tablet, and all electronic devices that can distract you. Throw them inside and lock them tightly. Place the key in a location where you must stand up and walk very far to get it. The second step, sit at your desk, bring out a piece of white paper, and write down the single unique hard skill with a clear monetization pathway that you are going to dead. End study for the next 120 days. Do not write many, just one. Whether it is video editing, copywriting, planning, or software programming, foreign language translation, select one, and then tell yourself that for the next hour, my world has only this skill. And if I don't understand it, I will look it up. And if I fail, I will start over until I gnaw through every single pixel point clearly. The third step, go to your WeChat groups, go to major order, taking platforms, and use your most sincere attitude, even if you have to beg or lower your price, to secure a real delivery task during the next second hour. Use other people's real gold and silver and criticism to test the results of your previous hour. Do not be afraid of failure. Do not be afraid of being rejected. You have absolutely nothing right now, and the least valuable thing you have is that cheap pride of yours. If you can stick to this system for 21 days, you will discover that your brain begins to become clear again and your eyes begin to have light. If you can stick to this system for 90 days, you will discover that you have already mastered the ability to earn extra money anytime and anywhere in this era, and your self-confidence will grow by geometric multiples. If you can stick to it for 120 days, I guarantee you that your entire mental outlook, your wealth structure, and even your view of the future will undergo a thorough and complete transformation. You might not immediately turn into a multimillionaire, and you might not achieve class transition overnight, but you will definitely turn into a completely different person. You will turn into a strong person who is full of a sense of discipline, full of control, and who makes the people around him feel awe. And such a strong person can take away anything he wants in this world. When Ajian started this challenge, he was heavily in debt, he had no degree, he lived in a leaking single room, and he had only a bottom-tier customer service job. The plight he faced was 10 times or 100 times harder than what you have right now. But he made a choice, and he won. And you, currently sitting in a warm room, holding a smartphone in your hand, connecting to the most developed internet in the world, and possessing countless free educational resources. The chips you possess are much more than what Ajian had back then. Now, the only suspense remains in your own hands. Tomorrow night at 8 p.m., when that moment of destiny arrives once again, will you continue to be like a corpse without a soul, lying on the bed and pressing those entertainment apps, waiting for the next strike from life amid hollow pleasure? Or will you be like a true warrior, turning off your phone, rolling into a small dark room, and going to build your own future with your own hands? Your future self is currently standing behind that hopeful finish line at 10 p.m., staring tightly at every single movement of yours right now. Do not make them wait any longer, and do not make them disappointed any longer.